Yo, what is up, guys? It's your boy Skull and Bones 2 and 2 here, and in today's Gears of War E-Day video, we're going to be talking about the upcoming seasonal content and how I think it's going to work in Gears of War E-Day. So, the first thing I want to get off the bat is this is, unironically, our Halo Reach. If you really think about it, right? This is Gears of War's Halo Reach. It's either a really big send-off or the kickstart to something beautiful. We all know that Halo Reach was indubitably the best game Bungie has ever, unironically in my opinion, has ever put out before they transitioned into the other games that they ended up making, like Destiny, so on and so forth. And then 343 Industries took over for Halo. This is, in a sense, our Halo Reach. And I'm going to explain. I'm going to give you some of the similarities, and then we'll start talking more about the seasons and how that's going to work and all that other stuff. So the reason I say that to begin is because Gears of War is featuring at least in the lore, a time frame where we are going back to the beginning, where it all began. Same thing with Halo Reach. That game was a prequel, nothing about the Master Chief. It was about the story before him and what led and basically had climbed up to allowing him to be in the spotlight. If the sacrifices for Noble Team had not been made, there would be no other games in the future. There would be no Chief. He would have never made it off of Reach. In a sense, instead of us not really staying with Marcus, we aren't really staying with the classic Delta Squad, but we're exploring what that post-Pendulum War era of Sarah looks like, and then what it felt like when the Locust came on that day and witnessing the destruction, death, and misery that came with E-Day. We are going back to the beginning. We're getting, just like Reach, customization we have never been able to do in any other Gears game before. Now, I know Halo Reach didn't really have weapon attachments, but something that was introduced into Halo Reach that was very reminiscent of Call of Duty was perks or abilities. Halo was never really one to incorporate perks or abilities in games. They always had pickups, so you would go to a power up on the map, pick it up, and it would just apply to your character. If it's an overshield buff, active camouflage, a shield, or a bubble shield you could put down for protection, stuff like that. So in Gears of War E-Day, we are very much getting that treatment where we're taking aspects from other games, other Gears titles that had some features tested in but weren't really implemented into mainline games, and we're getting that in this new game. We are getting, a really diverse set of features in a Gears game for the first time. So not only that, we're getting a beginning set piece, we're getting this awesome customization, awesome weapon attachments, awesome features. We are also going to be having our first really big map experience. I know we can kind of go back to Gears 5 campaign for that, but I don't really want to use that as the sandbox because you were very limited in the campaign and you really didn't interact with any other players. This is the first time where we're getting a 12-player mode and a big open sandbox. And the first thing that, just clicks to me is Invasion from Halo Reach. It was an open big team battle. You played as the Covenant, you played as the UNSC, and you had access to vehicles, weapons, abilities. It's very reminiscent of Battlefront's Supremacy mode, where it's a non-linear open world experience in a way where you're using legacy characters, weapons, different characters with different abilities, and so on and so forth. And we get that in this game. This is something that we have never, ever experienced as a traditional Gears of War, and it's new to us as the Gears of War fan base. We've always had this like cover-to-cover shooter where cover is life, and that has always played into the core mechanics of Gears of War, but we are getting something different. Now, with that out of the way, I do want to talk about how the seasons might work in Gears of War E-Day. Here is why. If we look at the pre-order content for Gears of War E-Day, we can see that they're structuring multiplayer around a seasonal basis, 5 in specifics. They're not counting the 5th one because, the first one will be the one that we all enjoy, which is like that launch season, and then the 4 other ones following. Now, we know here that we're going to be using iron and such to procure a shop that we don't know what's going to entail. It could be executions, it could be cosmetics, it could be a plethora of things, and that's something we could talk about in another video on how the store possibly could work. But it shows here that they're gearing up to be giving us a live service seasonal format, and if they're going to stick to that, then we can look at previous games and how their content drops worked and how we can kind of formulate how the seasons will go according to the past, if they're going to follow anything like that. If we begin with the Coalition's first project, Gears of War 4, well, technically not their first, but their first mainline game, we can talk about Gears of War 4's cycle, and we know that their updates, their title updates, heavily revolved around updates to multiplayer. Sometimes they had some love sprinkled into like campaign and horde, but we'll be following that. The first thing I want to look at is the major update that introduced the rise of horde, because if we're going to be following anything remotely close to the past games, we know that horde is actually going to be pretty important in Gears of War E-Day. So I'd like to assume that they're going to give a update specifically tailored to updating that mode and keeping it fresh, keeping it alive. So the first update may not deal anything with horde, but the second update may be a huge mix-up and update to content and horde. And through the seasons progress, and there'll just be small drops and small, quality of life updates. But we know specifically this update kind of targeted, keeping rewards fresh in horde, class updates, game mode updates, ranking specifically in horde. So we can follow that formula, then we know that we should be expecting something like that for Horde Siege. As a personal fact, I do know that they're going to be putting a very big emphasis on Horde Siege. Believe it or not, besides multiplayer, this is going to be the real cash cow for Gears of War. There are a lot more casual players than there are competitive players, and so people need to understand that this is what's going to be drawing a lot of players into Gears of War before they start delving into any of the other modes. So do expect a lot of love to be coming to Horde Siege, a lot of updates, a lot of things that are going to make the game feel fresh. And besides that, now we can move on to the other things. And I want to talk about Gears of War 5 specifically. Gears 5 introduced Operations. Operations had different things that they brought to the table in terms of updates. Now, Gears of War 5's live service, brochure wasn't really the best. And I really hope that they don't do a repeat of that. In fact, I'll show you how the rollouts worked for the Operations and then what we can take away from that for Gears of War E-Day. In Gears of War 5, specifically, we had about 8 operations. We had Operation 1 Heroes, Operation 2 Free For All, Operation 3 Gridiron, Operation 4 Brothers in Arms, Operation 5 Hollowstorm, which in my opinion was the most richest and best operation we had ever received. We had Operation 6 Made in the Abyss. We had Operation 7 All Fathers, and Operation 8, along with maps and cosmetics. Each of these operations featured basically brand new modes. So for the first operation, we had the Tour of Duty system kicking off, supply drops, new characters for Horde and Escape, and maps like Core and Exhibit. Operation 2 was the big update to introduce Free For All, which was a mode that we had been asking for since forever. Added the popular 14-player Free For All mode, arcade mode, 2v2 Nashers, and maps including All Fathers Arena, Pit, and Lift. Operation 3, Gridiron, brought the intense single flag capture mode called Gridiron, basically capture the flag, along with Pahanu and Canals maps, and an extensive lineup of Locust-themed character skins. Operation 4, Brothers and Wills, revamped the rank system and added a couple returning classic game modes, a bunch of returning character classics, some classic maps like Thrashball, and it was just a nice return to form. We had Operation 5 Hollowstorm, which was the largest post-launch update, separating PvE classes from specific characters and bringing back 7 characters, including Scourge and Dizzy Wallen, the Scorcher weapon, and emulsion-themed maps like Nexus. Operation 6 introduced the control mode, some more character skins, some new maps, so on and so forth. You guys can see here the trend. As the game dies down, they start to focus more on the cosmetic side of things, some new maps, some skins, and that's pretty much it. They stop inventing game modes. They stop investing into things as the game's life cycle stops and they're getting ready for a new project. But one thing that was really, the highlight of Gears 5 was the fact that we were getting DLC weapons. We had never received DLC weapons in a Gears of War game before, and that's because pretty much when the game launched, all the weapons that came out were staying, and not much was changing about the sandbox in terms of the weapon sandbox. Nothing really changed. So what can we do in terms for predicting Gears of War E-Day's seasonal content? Well, I'd like to believe that the first launch update is going to be something simple. We'll probably get some new updates, new characters, maybe some new maps, but they'll keep it grounded. The second mode, because they like to bust Horde stuff out early, the second phase, I should say, not mode, in terms of content will be focused around PvE, Horde, maybe some campaign stuff. I do feel like they want to go big or go home with this game, so we could be seeing campaign DLC. Campaign DLC was something that came back in Gears 5 because it was a big thing in Gears of War 3, and there were so many stories that they wanted to tell through DLC, but it got cut short. So I believe in this game, they're going to be doing some campaign DLCs. I think that'll be maybe towards the middle or the end, near that end life cycle, when they're getting ready for year 2 of the game, if the game does successful and lasts that long. Through each of the content drops, I do believe that each season will have new weapons introduced. And I think we are going to be getting maps alongside those weapons, but you're probably thinking, Skull, how are there going to be weapons introduced every season? And it's simple. There's going to be weapon attachments and what on weapons now, which is something we've never been able to do before. And that's just going to keep it fresh. But think about it. Why are we going to have the core loadout of power weapons and starting weapons remain the same when they have this new attachment system, when there's going to be a bunch of things to explore? So just add to that, add weapons, let us customize said weapons and grow from there. I do think that each season it'll come and go. So it'll probably be one season we get a new weapon. The next season we take a break. The following season after that we'll get a new weapon, so that the meta doesn't like change all the time and people aren't worrying about, you know, there being some new broken gun every season in Gears like it's Call of Duty. I think they're not going to do that, but they'll find a way to make it work. I do believe that this is going to be the new precedent coming out, and I do believe that the content in terms of like the store and stuff will have to match that. People are going to want to invest heavy in Gears of War, especially since it's not like a mainstream title. You know, like usually for games, they see a resurgence in players when there's a new season, a new update. They add content to the game to make it feel fresh and new. And so I really do think that the Coalition is going to strive to push for that, to get returning players. So, you know, they have their base core fan base, but some people might try EA when it comes out and not stick with it, but they're still interested in Gears. They just got tired of it. They introduce a new crazy new update, new cosmetics, new game modes, new features, new ways to play the game. And people are going to want to come back. They're going to want to play. I do believe that if we follow the structure from Gears 4 and 5, we have somewhat of a expected time frame for what we should see content-wise. And a couple other things that I would like to add maybe on the content creator side of things is like, I do hope that this time around the Coalition along these seasonal drops has a lot more assistance to give to content creators, you know, a lot more feedback to give us, communicate with us, give us things to make pushing out this content a lot better and more appealing for other players, so that the game can get the attention that it needs, because 4 and 5 really lacked communication between the studio and the content creators. So I really do hope that it's something that can be worked on as the seasons progress. But that's pretty much all I have. I do hope that you guys like this video, see some of the things that I'm talking about, and, you know, making sure that it makes sense. I mean, this is going to be the third Gears title from the Coalition. I'm expecting there's going to be some sort of resemblance from 4 and 5 and carrying on into here. I'm not saying everything's going to be the same, but I do believe there's going to be some things where we see it and we're like, oh, well, they did this in 4 and 5, so okay, Skull was right. So if you guys did like that idea, want to, you know, leave comments, discuss about it, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, spread the video to your friends. This is your boy Bones, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.